What is going on, everyone, and welcome back to the Sports Talk on Tap podcast. We're here. You can find daily videos Monday through Friday covering all the four major sports leagues, whether it be NFL, NBA, NHL, or MLB, games, highlights, news, all that fun stuff. We're here to talk about great week last week, still 4th of July week. Hope everyone enjoyed it. We were still here grinding. We got the weekend to, recover, get ready for this next week as everyone heads back to work. But before we get into our segment today in NFL, which will be talking about the Eagles and kind of, this kind of a boom or bust year. Nick, unfortunately, obviously, we had some sad news over the weekend that I just wanted to bring up real quick. Vikings 4th-round cornerback Kyrie Jackson passed away in a car accident early Saturday morning. It just really goes to show, man, nothing is guaranteed in life. And it just, sucks to see something happen like that. And obviously, he will be missed. His story was kind of a good one too. You've seen obviously like Kurt Warner's story of stuff like, grocery bagger to Hall of Famer. Kyrie Jackson was working at a Harris Teeter, which when I was in Maryland, I saw it is like just like a grocery store, cutting ham at 19 before he finally went to Alabama and then Oregon to be a first-team All-American. So if it wasn't for his age, he probably would have been like a top, even higher pick. And I thought he had potential. It sucks. Just great person going out like that. But biggest lesson is for anyone out there is just not the people driving that ran into him and his friends' cars. Don't drink and drive. Nothing's good from it. You gotta, be just. There's always stuff like Uber and stuff. If you can't drive home, just just sucks. Well, that's all I wanted, to kind of talk about it real quick. Hopefully, prayers to Kyrie and his family. Just sucks. But with that being said, the main topic of today's episode is, does this need to be Philly's year? And then, obviously, Nick, 2 years ago, went to a championship, was seconds away from winning the Super Bowl, but, Patrick Mahomes plays. And then last year, they looked right on pace to go back, start off 10-1 before they really fell off the train tracks. And they went, I believe it was like 1-6 in their last games and a blow down the wild card round. Just a disaster way to the season. But now they're trying to regroup. They've, cornerback was a big need. They used their 2 first-round picks to get Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean from the draft. They also, were very aggressive in free agency, signing a running back, Saquon Barkley. They still have, Jalen Hurts, still a good offensive line. But they did lose Jason Kelce. They brought in new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator. Nick, I just wanted to think, obviously we might have different opinions, but, do you think the Eagles live up to the hype this year? And, do you find a scenario in which they get back to the Super Bowl? Or, is it just one of those things where they had their peak, but, Jalen Hurts was figured out, and this team, losing Kelce might only get worse. There's kind of, 2 different sides to this thing. And, is Sirianni the right coach for this team?
Well, if people have, watched our very early season predictions, if you haven't, go check that out. But I do think Philly is going to live up to the expectations. I have them, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, I'm pretty sure I have them winning the Super Bowl. So I very much so think they're going to live up to the expectations. I think getting Saquon is a huge move for this team. It could be looked at halfway through the season, by the end of the season, as the best move made in the offseason. I get, you lose one of the best centers in NFL history in Jason Kelce, and that's always going to hurt you no matter what. Like, we're going to see some sort of drop-off on that offensive line, whether it's pass protection, run blocking, whatever, just leadership.
The tush push.
But I still think they have such a good team that they can afford to lose a guy like Jason Kelce and still be a very, very good football team. I think Jalen Hurts is going to bounce back. And before anybody, calls me an Eagles glazer or whatever, I hate Philadelphia. If there's one team in the NFL that I would say I dislike the most, it would probably be the Eagles. But I know,
Well,
I know
I
when to
don't
give
know.
it to their respect. What do you mean you don't know? That's who
I
I hate.
mean, you're really glazing them. Just Super Bowl after a wild card exit. You could have easily said, like miss playoffs. Next year they continue this slump. There's a couple of different ways you could have gone about this, but I respect the non-biasy if this truly is, like your least favorite team.
No, if you ask, people I know, people at school that I'm sure I hate the Eagles, but
Okay.
I know when to give a team their flowers. It's the same thing with, the Yankees. I know the Red Sox just beat them, but early in the year, I'm still going to Judge the American League MVP and all that
Those
stuff.
Yankees flowers are running out, but yeah, no, that's
But that's it. That's another topic for another time.
yeah.
The
Yeah.
short answer is I do think it is a chip or bust year, but I do think Philly's going to bounce back. I don't think they're going to, go out sad the last half of the year, get smoked in the wild card. Like I think they'll, at very least, make the NFC Championship game. I know that's probably not what Eagles fans are, hoping for. They're probably hoping to get back to the Super Bowl and win it this time because they've seen their team do it. They know they have the potential because, like you said, if it wasn't for, Patrick Mahomes being who he is, they probably would have won that Super Bowl with how Jalen Hurts played. But overall, yes, I do think they will improve vastly.
Yeah. I mean, I do agree with a good amount of what you said. I really do think the Eagles will bounce back from that end of season slump. Wins wise, they still won 11 games last year, regular season wise, so it wasn't like a drastic fall off. I'm expecting around the same, like 11 to 12 wins, but I'm also not expecting them to start off the season 11-1 and then lose 7 in a row. I think there's going to be more of a balance in that, and they might feel good about it.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, this is still a stacked roster. Still going to be a good offensive line. Like I said, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith might be the best 1-2 punch, just the consistency from both of them. You still have Dallas Goedert, that defense. If Quinyon Mitchell or even Cooper DeJean can step up, we know how good that front seven is, with players like Jalen Carter. They had Bryce Huff. They did lose to Sam Reich, but, still adding Bryce Huff. Darius Slay, if he can, still remain okay. He's getting up there in age, but if he can still be decent, that's going to be an interesting thing. The biggest question mark I have with them is just because of how close they were to win the Super Bowl 2 seasons ago, and their 10-1 start this past season, even though it was kind of a weird 10-1, they were like the Vikings a couple years ago, were just winning all the close games. They weren't. Even though they were 10-1, a lot of people feel like they weren't playing, as good as ball as they were the year before. And part of that was, Brian Johnson. And then they eventually, I think it was Sean Desai into Matt Patricia. The defense was a whole mess. They upgraded those two positions. I believe they added Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio. So those are two of the best at their respective positions. But they're just some weird vibes still. There's some weird vibes in the locker room. You remember Dallas Goedert and Jalen Hurts, arguing on the sidelines in the Tampa Bay game, or mainly just Dallas Goedert screaming at Jalen Hurts and Jalen Hurts standing like a statue. But there's just some weird vibes with the whole Sirianni thing. Like, are people really bought in? So I really do think, there is a potential way where it does go south and they do ride this momentum and miss the playoffs. But I'd lean towards the side, they upgraded everywhere. It was, everyone's just frustrated when they're losing, and, they'll bounce back. But I still have some question marks. Is this team better than the 49ers? I don't think so. Is this team better than the Lions? I really don't think so. Is this team the best team in their division? Because you still have the Cowboys who won 12 games last year. That's a toss-up. They split those games, and, Dallas obviously went on to win the division. So, there's some in-between stuff where it's like, I think this team can bounce back, win 11 and 12 games, but can they get back to the championship and then go back to the Super Bowl and even win it and, defeat the king himself, Patrick Mahomes? That'll probably be coming out on the other side. I don't know. And it's just going to be a question mark to be seen. I do think this team will bounce back in the sense, they'll stabilize things, be a top 10 offense. You know, the defense will be better. But, you know, how much better can they really get? Because the Eagles are still relying on rookies at those positions. Darius Slay's still another year older. So, you know, there's a couple different ways you could look at it. But I'm kind of going to lean in the middle where I know, Nick, you have them 1 seed Super Bowl winners. You know, some people might have them missing the playoffs. I'm kind of in the middle. I think like 11 to 12 wins. But I just think maybe the divisional round or maximum NFC championship game is like their ceiling right now. I just don't think I think they missed their window 2 years ago and even last year with Jason Kelsey with the loaded roster. And, you know, Shane Steichen, who's I think are already like a top 10 head coach based on 1 year and what he did there. So, you know, you're going to miss those guys. And it's just, you know, I think, you know, it's unfortunate, but, you know, how a window can, you know, open so quick. And then, you know, you're not the best team in the NFC anymore, but, you know, it is what it is. But maybe, you know, Philly can prove me wrong because they did beat the 49ers before in the championship game. Granted, you know, injury, but, you know, there's also a chance the Lions could take a step back. But I'm going to lean, you know, somewhere in the middle where they kind of, you know, are a solid team, but, you know, like a divisional round team.
Okay. The one thing, because I know you touched upon, like, it's tough to say if they're better than the 49ers because it really is. I know if you look, you know, 53-man roster up and down, the Eagles got a ton of talent, but then you think about it, like, how does the Eagles defense match up against the 49ers offense? And it's like, I don't know. But I still think, even taking that into consideration, that the NFC is much more wide open than the AFC. Like, it's hard to bet against Patrick Mahomes in the AFC. Like, I have a really hard time picking another team to go to the Super Bowl if the Chiefs are in the playoffs. But I think with the NFC, really, anything can happen. We saw Detroit damn near go to the Super Bowl last year. I know the 49ers ultimately did go and lose to the Chiefs, but I think any of these teams could get exposed on any given night with, like, their flaws. You know, we saw the Lions, their defense and their aggressiveness was a flaw that got exposed in the NFC Championship. The Cowboys got cooked.
Like we said, though, the Lions went out and improved on that. So the Lions only going to get better, you know, with the improved defense. And, you know, the Packers are so young. I'm really high on them. I know you are too, at least, you know, seating wise. So, you know, are the Packers only going to get better? Are they better than the Packers? You know, that remains a question mark, you know.
I still would say right now the Eagles probably are a little bit better experience wise. But the Packers are getting there. Like, they're very quickly climbing.
I mean, they almost went into San Francisco and won. So, you know,
right.
And Matt LaFleur is such an underrated coach in this league. He has never, I think it's a crazy stat, has never lost a game in December. Like, how does that happen? He's been in the league for like 4
I think he caught a little too much flack whenever, you know, they would lose in the playoffs or whatever. He would kind of, I feel like he would kind of take a lot of the heat for that. But, you know, I mean, when your offense scores 10 points, I get it. It was, you know, an awful, you know, weather game against the 49ers, you know, the year they were the 1 seed and everybody was picking them to go to the Super Bowl, including myself. I thought the Packers were going to run through the NFC and they just – and, you know, the NFC –
The year was the year even before that when they lost to Brady and the Buccaneers in the championship game.
Yeah, because that was Rodgers' first MVP, right? And then he won it.
And they were, you know, coasting and, you know, and Brady melted down the second half, like through 3 interceptions. People thought they were going to come back, but then that questionable field goal, you know, go for it call. But, you know, at the end of the day, it is what it is there. But, yeah, no, I think Philly, it just depends. They got the talent to go to the Super Bowl, but they have the top end talent. I still think depth is a huge question mark for this team. And, you know, still some things on defense, but you know, we'll see. I think it's a team. It's a very interesting team, but I'm really looking at Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean. Does someone step up in those cornerback positions? You know, because part of the reason why they were so bad was James Bradbury was awful for them last year. You know, and Darius Slay kind of took a step back. So, you know, can someone in this cornerback room step up to help, you know, out that really good front defensive line they got?
Any like Super Bowl team, there's always going to be those guys who you never talk about in the offseason. They're always going to step up and have a big, you know, either a big year or a big playoffs or whatever. Like, I don't think a ton of people were, you know, talking about Trent McDuffie for the Chiefs last year. And then all of a sudden he becomes like their best corner alongside L'Jarius Sneed, who people kind of already knew was pretty good. But it's always, those guys you don't talk about who have a really, really good year. Rashee Rice, I mean, I know he's kind of going through some stuff right now, but I don't think people thought he was going to, be the Chiefs' breakout receiver, their top guy. People were probably thinking more so Kadarius Toney just because of that Eagles Super Bowl, and then he kind of turned into
Kadarius Toney was going on Instagram Live before the Super Bowl, talking about
why he's not
how
playing.
he isn't injured. Well, Kadarius Toney, if you learn how to catch the ball, maybe they won't mark you down as injured. Yeah, but Kadarius Toney himself, the man, has 2 rings, so
he stepped up in that Philly Super Bowl. Like, he was a guy who would have thought stepped up. He catches
Sky Moore. Sky
Moore. Like, it's always the names. It's never, like, oh, I hope Patrick Mahomes steps up. Like, he's going to be there. It's going to be some, third, fourth receiver, your third running back. Their first Super Bowl, it was why am I blanking on his name now? That people said the running back that
Darian Williams or something.
Is it Damian
Williams.
Yeah, who people thought could have won the Super Bowl MVP.
I thought he should have. He was a dog.
He went crazy against the 49ers in the second half. So it's just guys like that. And Philly, I do question their depth too, because like their defense is heavily reliant on rookies now, which is always a worry. Like, you always worry about that, even if they're, a top 5 pick. If you're relying on rookies to shut down other teams' best receivers, it's like you're rolling the dice there. You're rolling the dice. But
I trust Vic Fangio. That's one thing I'm confident in. You go from Sean Desai and Matt Patricia to Vic Fangio, who's still one of the best defensive minds. So we'll see what he cooks up. And, like I said, you never know who steps up, who could have a Sauce Gardner rookie season.
Exactly.
That's all. Not probably not that high of a bar, but, just a really good rookie season. Mm-hmm. But, with that being said, Eagles, one of the most intriguing teams, obviously one of the biggest markets, one of the biggest fan bases in the NFL. They're hungry to get back probably to on the field. And, it'll be interesting to see what they do in training camp, who's winning those jobs, who's going to be starting alongside Darius Slay and around some of the other spots, who's going to be that Eagles wide receiver 3, because we preached the A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, but who's going to step up and assert themselves as that wide receiver 3 in the room? It's going to be interesting to see, how Philly fills out the rest of their roster as they head into the season with still very high expectations, despite their poor ending to last season. With that being said, so, we talked about the Cowboys, we talked about the Eagles, so, we got a little bit on an NFC East roll here. But let us know in the comments what you guys think. Does Philly bounce back and go back to the Super Bowl, or have a great season, or do they kind of bust and have something similar last year where they're a wild card, or potentially even miss the playoffs? Let us know in the comments. But as always, make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy this kind of content. We're going to be here grinding throughout the rest of the summer. And Nick, this is the last month without football as we are, like training or preseason games. But training camp is coming up quickly right before our eyes. So we're almost there. But with that being said, the content won't stop. As always, make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.